Hi there, Jeff here from the Wetsuit Centre, talking to you today about the Xcel Axis range of wetsuits for 2021 into 2022. So this will cover summer and winter wetsuits. And Xcel as a company, if you're not familiar with them, are based in Hawaii, or started in Hawaii, and actually we started making wetsuits for the Navy SEALs. So particularly high spec wetsuits, which got picked up by surfers and particularly good for cold water. Got a really excellent reputation for sort of cold water countries, keeping you nice and warm. The Axis wetsuit comes earlier on in the range, so it's a bit more of a budget wetsuit. But having said that, it's still a really good quality wetsuit for the money you're spending. So it's for people looking for a good quality wetsuit, but without spending a fortune. And the thing that gets a little bit confusing sometimes is the different types of Axis. You might be looking online and see an Axis FL, Flatlock, or an Axis GBS, and then you've got the Axis X as well, which sometimes get a bit confusing. A lot of people ask what is the difference between them. So that's what this video is all about, is just sort of get you familiar, walk you through the sort of the features you get with each wetsuit. So that's the key thing, basically, when you're sort of looking at price differences and what FL and GBS means. What that essentially means, it's got something here within the Flatlock, which is what the FL stands for, which is the Flatlock seam. Okay, so this is the lower end of the market, and because Flatlock seams, as we zoom in, essentially let in water, they do bleed in water through the punch holes. They're more of a summer wetsuit, more of a warmer water wetsuit, because they're not going to seal the wetsuit closed. And that's what the FL stands for, Flatlock. It's a really strong construction, gives the suit a lot of shelf life. But it does let in water. It's cheaper to manufacture, so the suit is a little bit cheaper, but better for sort of like the summer months. In the UK, we'd say sort of June, July, August, and probably September as well. So particularly good for those months for people looking to sort of grab a suit for the summer. Okay, so that's what the FL stands for. And again, you've got that across men's, women's and kids. This is the kids version, and that's Flatlock construction, that's what it means. Okay. And then if we look at the other type of construction, that's going to be the GBS. So you've got the Axis Flatlock and then the Axis GBS. The GBS suit has got the glued and blind stitch welded seams. Okay, so what we'll do is put this at the front, and you have a little close-up on this. And essentially what happens here is they stitch the neoprene halfway through, okay, and then on the other side of the neoprene, on the inside, you then get it glued shut, or welded shut. Okay, that's all done by hand, so you can imagine it's a little bit more technical to construct, but the benefits of it is it's nicer against the skin, but it also stops water coming in through the seams, which is particularly important if you're surfing in cold water. Okay, so to have that sort of glued and blind stitch wetsuit makes it more expensive, but it is going to keep you in the water warmer for longer. Now typically with the Flatlock construction, you will only get that in a 3mm wetsuit, which is conducive to warmer summer temperatures. Okay, any 4mm wetsuit or thicker, or a 5mm wetsuit, you usually will not get the Flatlock construction, because it goes against the idea of it being a cold water suit. Pretty much every wetsuit that we sell in a 4.3 and a 5.3 or a 5.4 is always going to be glued and blind stitch construction. So the Flatlock, again, you're really looking at summer water temperatures. Okay, so we'll grab this up the front. So the Axis and the Axis X. Obviously panelled different across genders and for kids and that kind of thing. This is the ladies' suit. But essentially you've got that super stretched neoprene top to bottom. Okay, you've got the glued and blind stitch welded seams. With all of the suits, you've got this kind of like a Duraflex knee pad, and that knee pad is just particularly strong material to stop the knee wearing and tearing. Particularly good for surfing, where you sometimes use your knees when you're popping up, or you use your knee to duck dive. Okay, all of these suits are within the Axis range are a back zip. So the suit itself, you're getting in through the upper part of the body here, nice long zip, specially treated zip to stop any water sort of coming in. Any water that does come in is greeted with this sort of like underflap, which stops any water going directly into the suit. Now the thing that you get with the Axis suit as well, above the Axis Flatlock, so in the Axis GBS, you get this sort of like thermal material. We'll zoom in on that as well. And basically what that is a special sort of heat retaining fabric, which stops warmth leaving the body. So instead of it being lost slowly through the neoprene, this sort of heat retaining fabric will keep it in the suit for longer. Okay, so you stay warmer for longer. It's another sort of warming property, or a technical feature, which makes the suit a bit more expensive in the glued and blind stitch range. Okay, zooming further out, you've got a cool little key pocket. It's obviously only good for non-electric keys. And then the thermal lining, just so you know, does go all the way down the front of the suit. I'm going to turn this inside out. So that's the suit inside out. The thermal lining you can see is on the chest panel, around the kidneys, and then you get all that spot welding as well. Okay, so that is the Axis glued and blind stitched. Okay, now if we were to turn inside out the standard Flatlock ladies one, okay, so slightly different colourway, there would be nothing really going on side. None of that grey material, none of that thermal lining. But again, you get that back zip on the suit, and the panelling is slightly different as well, which is conducive to the different types of material in the suit. Okay. So that essentially is the Axis range of wetsuits, and that's between the Flatlock and the glued and blind stitched versions. And you're looking for the different qualities of seam, or the different sort of construction of seam primarily, but also the amount of that super stretch neoprene that you get through the suit. As we said before, you usually get the super stretch neoprene always throughout the body of the suit. In the lower end suits, the Flatlock, you might get that just proportionally around the shoulders, whereas as you move up into the range of the Axis GBS, that's the whole way through the suit. So if we grab you something a bit further up in the series now, which is going to be the Axis X. Now, within the Xcel range, they have sometimes the X brand of each wetsuit. So typically that's within the Axis, the Drylock, and the Comp. You have a sort of Axis version, then you have Axis X, then you have Comp, then you have Comp X, and then you have Drylock, and then Drylock X. What the X stands for, basically, it's just essentially it's the more premium version of that suit, and then you start to get even more features. Okay, so within the Axis range, you still have all of that super stretch neoprene like you do with the GBS version of the Axis, but you also have some other stuff going on which we'll walk you through. So on the seams in the upper body of the suit, you get this liquid taping. Actually, what we'll do is we'll zoom in on that for you. And that liquid taping is essentially a rubber material over the top of the seam to seal it and stop any wetsuit water coming in. And that's really good, giving the suit more shelf life, but it's also really good keeping water out. Okay, and you get that in the upper body of the wetsuit. Zooming back out, you also get the smooth skin panel on the front and on the back. Okay, and that's good at keeping wind out of the suit and generally keeping warmer in the winter. So the Axis X, you get those features, but you don't within the standard Axis GBS. Okay, so the X, look out for the X if you're looking for the really top-notch suit or within that range. The Axis X is very much geared towards sort of robustness or longevity and warmth. Okay, so if we turn the suit inside out now, for you this is the hooded version. Obviously you do get this in a non-hooded version in 5mm, 3.2 and 4.3. We'll have a little look at what's going on inside. Okay, so here we are inside the hooded version of the Axis X. And this is obviously a thicker wetsuit. It's a 5.4, so 5mm on the lower body, 4mm on the upper body, and that's the same across the range, the 3.2. It's always the thicker neoprene in the lower body when you need more warmth. Looking through this suit then, you've got a couple of types of sort of thermal lining here, and that goes the whole way through the lower body, and this is basically, I think it's called the infrared thermal lining within the Xcel range, but essentially it's similar across all brands. It's just a heat retaining sort of water resistant fabric, which just really keeps warmth inside the suit like thermal underwear. And you get that the whole way, kind of from the chest and from the kidneys and the back panel the whole way down the suit. One thing that's worth noting with the Axis X range, you get the liquid taping, as I say, on the outside of the upper body. On the inside of the lower body, you get the standard sort of flat taping, basically. And I'll bring this in a bit closer for this one. And essentially that's just like a really good way of sort of making the seams more comfortable against your skin, but also stopping any water bleeding through and giving the suit a sort of longer shelf life with a bit more of a robust seam. Okay, so that's everything going on the inside of the Axis X, which is again a notch up from the Axis. One thing that is worth noting on the Axis X range of wetsuits, they typically come with the chest entry. So a little bit trickier to get in and out of because you're getting in through the top of the wetsuit. But the benefit of a chest zip is you don't have a back zip, so you have more flexibility in the back panel of the suit. And also they're a little bit better at keeping water out of the suit because you don't have that break in your collar like you do with a back zip. The zip comes from in to out, which is always good, so you don't have to try and clip it on with a little toggle where you pull it faster. Essentially the chest entry is sewn over the top of the inside of the wetsuit, and basically any water that does come in through your collar, rather than going into the suit, just comes out the back through the drain holes on the suit and on the arm. So it's a really good way of keeping water out of the wetsuit. That can be a bit trickier to get on and off. So going full circle, coming back to the Xcel Flatlock wetsuit, hopefully this has been a bit of a useful video to sort of differentiate what you're getting for your money between the different types of Axis. But the key thing is really, primarily the biggest difference is the types of neoprene, the seams that you get on the suit, and then the Axis X, you start to get into the sort of like really full-on thermal lining and all the things like the taping on the seams. So the Xcel Axis, you need to look out for the difference between Flatlock and glued and blind stitching, which will say either in the title of the wetsuit or in the description when you're shopping around. Typically, if it's the cheaper end of the wetsuit, or if there's a big difference in price between the Axises without the X being involved, then that will be down to the construction of the seam. But have a look at the description. The key things you're looking for is the Flatlock seam or GBS seam. If you want that colder water wetsuit, which is going to keep out water through the seams, you need the GBS. But if you're just looking for a good quality, nice and stretchy wetsuit for summer months, then you can go with the Flatlock. And then if you're looking for something a little bit more premium, you'd be looking at the Axis X. But again, with Xcel range, sometimes you get the full super stretch neoprene the whole way through your suit, like you do with this kids version. But on some of the suits, like the women's, you'll get that around the upper body, and the same with the men's. And then through the center part of the wetsuit, it's more of a low-grade neoprene. So again, look at the description and look at how much of the wetsuit proportionally is the super stretch neoprene, okay? Because if it is sort of 50-50, then just make sure it's in the upper body of the suit, and then obviously make sure it compares well against other suits that you're looking at around that sort of price point. But those are the differences fundamentally. Hopefully that's been useful, not too confusing. And any more questions, leave a comment below and we will endeavour to get back to you.